Hi everyone, this is the video for week 3. And again, as you have found, you want to be watching these videos while filling out the worksheet, which should resemble the screen share in front of that I'm showing you right now. So now we are on chapter 2. So I'm gonna again translate, maybe explain some things, some of which will I have asked you to fill out on the worksheet that's due. Okay, so it begins, notice here, this is chapter 2, verse 1, right? And it begins with Naomi's name, right? U la Naomi, okay, moda la isha ish gibor hayil, okay? So this is and, right, va to Naomi. Okay, now, um, one of the ways, of course, Hebrew does not have things like, I don't know, italics or punctuation. So therefore, the writer only has certain ways to tell you that they are emphasizing particular words, okay, or that they're kind of doing something translationally interesting with these words, okay. And one of the things that the writers will do, right, to tell you especially about a particular kind of stress or emphasis is to begin a sentence without using a verb consecutive, okay, as you see here, right? So instead of saying va, I don't know, some kind of verb consecutive, it begins with the name. Okay, and so there's a couple of ways to translate that, right? One way is to say, well, they're putting special emphasis, so you can kind of bold it, right? So you need to kind of capture the emphasis in the translation, and indeed to Naomi, right? Another thing that the writer might be doing, which I think is what's going on here, is that he's giving you kind of side information, right? So he's kind of turning to the side and saying, now, by the way, right, the reader should know this, right? And the way that he's going to do that is by starting a sentence without a verb consecutive, okay? So you can do either, right? So I guess I would translate it as, now, by the way, to Naomi, u la Naomi, moda la isha ish gibor hayil. Okay. And so what is moda, right? Now notice how, like I said, right, this is a substantivized participle, right, because of the main here. And indeed, right, if you were to search for the trilateral triconsonantal root, it would be yod, dalit, ayin, to know, right? And in this book, there will be kind of lots of different references to knowledge, right? Both sexual, right, as you've seen, knowledge is put together with sex, as you saw in Genesis, for example, with the Adam and Eve narrative, right? But also someone you know as somebody who is a kin, somebody who is part of your bloodline or part of your family, right? And someone who becomes your kin not through the bloodline. So there's also knowledge theme here, right? Who you know, who you don't know. So now to Naomi was literally, it says somebody she knew, i.e. a relative, right? I think your RSV says kinsman, that's fine too. Now to Naomi was a relative, okay? To Isha, la Isha, to her husband, okay? Ish, a man, Gibor, a warrior or young, okay? This is a kind of warrior, like, a strong man. And now it emphasizes the strength by putting in Hayil, which means either strength, or it can sometimes mean kind of metaphysical strength, i.e. somebody who's rich. And you can really read it both ways, okay? So now to give you a kind of smoother translation, just that part that I've gone over. Now to Naomi, there was a kinsman of her husband or to her husband, a man of strength or a young man of wealth or a young man, it's my suspicion, of both strength, right, i.e. fertile, right, and wealth, okay? Or there was a relative to Naomi's husband, right, a rich buff guy, okay, the kind of Prince Charming fellow. This is who's being introduced, okay? And so why does the writer, call him, right? I mean, notice how many things you find out about who will, this guy who is this Gibor Hayil, who will end up being Boaz, right? You find out that he's wealthy, right? You find out that he is strong. And the importance of strength, of course, in this text is that not only is he strong, but he is what? Fertile, right? And of course, the story of Ruth begins with the lack of fertility, right, experienced by this family in the land of Moab. Okay. So and also you find out that he is a kin. He is a relation, somebody related to the family of Elimelech, which becomes quite important because, of course, Ruth will center on this very strange institution called the levirate marriage, okay, which is all based on kind of kin relationships, okay. Now, it kind of, to make sure that the reader knows how perfect Boaz is, right? The writers will re-emphasize, right, what makes him so appropriate as the kind of hero, okay, or the kind of Prince Charming to the true protagonist Ruth, okay? Mi mishpachat Elimelech, okay? To Naomi was a kinsman, right, or a relative of her husband, a man, a young man of great wealth or strength from mi mishpachat, right? Mishpachat means family, from the family of Elimelech. Okay, so again, telling you that this person is perfect because not only is he wealthy, fertile, maybe buff, strong, whatever, right? But he is also from the right family. Okay, and as I think I discussed in the first set of videos, you know, there's a kind of interesting, almost redefinition of family going on, right? It's not only somebody who is related, you know, by blood, which seems to be in some parts of the Hebrew Bible, like Ezra and Nehemiah, for example, the main thing that counts is the kind of bloodline, you know. But Ruth almost has this more expansive vision of the family, as somebody who comes into your family, though a foreigner. Okay, and we are told, "U Shamo Boaz." Okay, now the name Boaz is also quite interesting because it's, you know, because of course this is a text where names, the meaning of names are important. Okay, and there's many ways to read Boaz's name, but one way the you know is that you have ba or in with az, which means strength. In him is strength. Okay, again emphasizing maybe the fertility of Boaz, or the fact that he is a good person to come in, because of course these two women at this point, Ruth and Naomi, are left kind of defenseless without a male protector. Of course, though the reader knows there is indeed a male-ish protector that is watching over them, i.e. God, right? But certainly now you have the entrance of Boaz, who will function as this kind of perfect protector for this family. Okay, so it's fitting that his name would mean in him is strength. It's also fitting that Boaz is indeed the name of something else in the Hebrew Bible. There are two pillars, big giant pillars in front of the temple in Jerusalem. And they're named, right? Some have wondered whether they're kind of to symbolize these two pillars that hold up the sky, okay, like a kind of maybe an atlas kind of figure. It's not clear. But one of the names of the pillar is also Boaz, in him is strength, right? And so, you know, maybe there's a kind of winking, right, by naming this character Boaz to this pillar, right? The strong pillar that will like uphold this family, that will play a part in upholding this family. Okay, perhaps that's why he is named Boaz. Okay, like I said, what the first verse does is that it emphasizes the family, the appropriate family relationship that Boaz has to now Naomi through her dead husband Elimelech. And the reason why it keeps emphasizing that, like I said, is because within this text, there would be an emphasis on something called levirate marriage. Okay, and levirate marriage is really what Naomi refers to when she is in the first chapter, when she's telling her daughter-in-laws, you know, no, you know, go back to your own mother's house. Why, you know, even if I were to, you know, am I young enough where I can give, you know, birth to another son? And even if I were you know, able to, are you going to wait for the son to come of it? And really what she's referring to in that whole statement, which sounds quite confusing, is this thing called levirate marriage. Okay, and there's lots of ink spilled on what levirate marriage is, right? And the reality is we don't know that much about it. We only have this text, which seems to be give you a very particular vision of levirate marriage. We also have Genesis 38, Judah and Tamar, very odd story, another odd story. At the heart of which is this institution called levirate marriage. And in short, levirate marriage is Like I said, everything I say can be debated, right? It seems to be both a kind of ethical institution in Israel. It's not clear whether it was ever really enforced, okay? But the thinking goes, right, that if a man dies without leaving a male heir, that his brother or a kin, you get different evidence, right? But usually a brother, right, will act as in the place of the man who has died so that his name does not die off. Okay. And in short, what the brother is supposed to do is supposed to sleep with the widow, right? Have a son by her who will be treated as the son of the dead man and not the son of the brother. Okay. And this is really to make sure that the line of that man does not die off. Okay. There may be other ethical reasons why this institution exists, right? One is, of course, as you saw, right, and as this text makes clear, um, women without a male protector, right, especially in a context where they cannot, except in very special cases, inherit, okay, means that they are automatically destitute. They're in a dire situation if their husband dies without any son, okay, or in this case, with the sons die as well, right? So some people think that levirate marriage, which sounds really bizarre, is a way for the female to be protected, okay, the widow to be protected. Why? Because all of a sudden she has a chance to get another son by somebody who is a kinsman, okay, of her husband, and that son can now inherit the property and the wealth of her husband who has died. So it's a way to kind of protect the woman. Okay. The brother who will be kind of doing this, right, is called a goel, a redeemer, right, gaal, and it has a kind of salvation-y kind of tone to this word, gaal, okay. And there is also, if you think about it from the perspective of the brother, some reasons why you might not want to do this, right? And this will explain what happens at the end of Ruth, okay, and also in Genesis 38. Notice that while this is a nice institution if you are a widow and would greatly suffer if you did not have a male heir, from the perspective of the brother who's left behind, right, this is maybe a lot lose-lose situation. And the reason is because now, right, not only would this male heir not be treated as your heir, right, so you don't get sort of the father of this son thing, right? But notice that, the more males they are in the family, right, the more the inheritance will be divided up. So you would actually get less money. Instead, that money that will be due to you, right, because your brother has died, right, will now go to the son that is yours, but is not treated as yours, okay? So for all these reasons, there may be some economic disincentive to performing the role of a goyel. Okay, and of course, if you read the story, you know that Boaz will agree to be the goel, and it kind of tells you, in some ways, the niceness or the ethical, that Boaz is a good guy, right? He's willing to do this thing, though he will suffer economically for it. Okay. Okay, so the reason why, of course, this text emphasizes that Boaz is related to Elimelech is again to clue you into the fact that he is an appropriate goyal. Now you'll say to me, but Susie, I thought it was the brother of the. Yes, it's true, and this is what I mean by we don't know that much about this institution, right? Technically, if you read Deuteronomy, right, the goel or the redeemer or the person that can function as this kind of replacement, dead person, right, a replacement dead brother, should be your brother, right? But in this case, we don't know quite how Boaz is related to Elimelech, that is Naomi's husband, but he doesn't seem to be a brother. So at least in the book of Ruth, the who can be a goel is taken much more expansively. Okay, and that would of course fit with the themes of Ruth, which is not, this kind of expansive vision of the family, right? A family is not really just who you are related to, right? It's family is who sticks with you, right? In the case of Ruth, and who helps you. So it would again make sense that in such a text, you would have an enlargement of the idea of who can be a redeemer, who can be a goel, who can perform this love right marriage. Okay. Okay, now going onwards to the next text, right? But Tomer Ruth Hamoavia El Naomi. Okay, so she says, so this is the normal way of telling you, right? Normal way that a sentence in Hebrew will begin with no emphasis, right? Verb consecutive, imperfect, in the call, third feminine singular. Now, Ruth the Moabitess said, and every time, almost every time, that Ruth is introduced, right? Kind of emphasizing her foreignness, which is really interesting, right? She will be called the Moabitess, right? Even after she's kind of forsaken or left her homeland, right, to follow her mother-in-law, okay? But whatever, okay. So Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, okay, Elechna, okay, Hasadeh, okay, va alakota bi shibolim, okay. It's kind of hard to say all these words. Okay, so she says to Naomi, and now this, right, Elachna. Like I said, when words are put together, right, this na, which is a kind of emphasis, but a kind of please, kind of a polite tone, almost a polite tone ending, right? I said, notice how all the sounds move to the end usually, okay? So really what you were taught, if you were taught this in Hebrew, right, is that na is a kind of, not emphatic, but a kind of pleading, kind of polite tone, right? Let me go, please. Okay, is a kind of, and so you can tell, right? This is a younger woman getting permission from a person that is higher in power, kind of respectfully asking them for permission. Okay, so notice how Ruth treats Naomi. Okay, now and this kind of, okay, so usually you can say Alech. Okay, you will see this Alech ha, this ah ending sometimes, right? As a way to kind of doubly emphasize this kind of pleasing, tone of this kind of a sentence. Okay, and there's another reason what this ah ending does, and in emphasizing this kind of polite, pleasing, kind of permission kind of tone, right? When you put together this with a verb consecutive with an imperfect, it kind of, what it does is that the writer is telling you to translate this in a particular way. Okay, these imperfects with this ah ending are sometimes called gessives or cohordatives, depending on whether it's first or third. Okay, you don't need to know the technical term. I'll just tell you exactly when I get to the translation. Okay, so she says, "Let me go, please." Okay, and you want to add all that. There's a particular way to talk to somebody who is above you in power or in kind of station. And usually that way to talk to somebody who's more powerful than you or who is in a position of more of an authority, right, is that you elongate what you say. Okay, this is like saying madam or ma'am or miss or sir, please let me go, miss, or please let me go, madam. Okay, it's kind of that tone. Okay, so let me go, please, right? Elekna, right? Hasade, to the field. Okay, so this is a I believe this is a cohortative when it's first. Okay, so this kind of plus an imperfect, what it does is that it makes it kind of progressive. Let me go, please, to the field so that I may lakat or glean among the sheaves, okay, which is what shabolim means, okay. So when you see this cohortative or this ah ending, especially with this kind of na, right, plus an imperfect, it tells you that you're supposed to add a little kind of progressive tint to the text. Okay, so I'll read it from the beginning. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Let me go, please, to the field so that I may glean among the sheaves." Okay, so you want to add a little "so that." Okay. This word lakat, which I don't have you parse interestingly, is interesting as well as this, right? This is, like I said, an imperfect. Why you have a prefix is from halak, right? Hey, lamet kaf, which means to walk and which acts like an irregular verb, unfortunately, when it conjugates, right? And this is imperfect first common singular. Okay, and like I said, this ah ending, usually it wouldn't be there, but it's there to kind of add to this cohortative, pleasing, promissory tone. Okay. Um, this other word, right? So that's let me go or to walk, halak. This word, alak, alakota. Okay. And the trilateral root is lamed kaf tet. Okay, kof tet. And this is a very, very, very interesting word too. It means to glean. Okay, but really it means there's a kind of secondary meaning or maybe primary meaning. It can mean to gather, lakat, right? To glean and to gather, right? And then what's interesting about this word is that it can mean the kind of gathering, not just of food here, which is what she's going to do, right? She's going to really, not dumpster dive, but she's going to go to a field, right? Because the requirement was that you don't strip your field of food if you were a farmer, right? You leave some gleanings behind. Why? So that poor people in town can come and get some food, pick some food out. And that's what she's essentially doing. Okay. Lacan, however, not only has this kind of gleaning, let me pick up some food, okay, that kind of aspect to it, but insofar as it can mean to gather, right, it has this vision of, has this kind of secondary meaning of the regathering of God's people, okay, or again, the sense of the, return from exile, right? When God will glean or will gather his people from the various places to which they were spread. Okay, and again, as we've seen before in Ruth 1, there is this very strong emphasis on a replay almost of this exile and return thing. Okay, as symbolized by Ruth or Naomi's family, right, who are nearly killed off, right, exiled. They kind of exile themselves, are nearly killed off in exile, but get to return, and their family gets built up, right? They get gathered together again. Okay. Um, so she says, let me gather among the sheaves here. This word sibolim or sibyl is also kind of interesting because it means, it's from shabal, right? Shin beit lamed. It means to grow out or even stream, growing out. This is thinking, it's this image, okay, and even kind of stream out, right? And here it's used to talk about grains of corn, like the grains that grow out, okay? But, again, notice there's reasons why the biblical writer will use certain words, and it has this very strong fertility imagery again, because it can be a word that's used not only for the growth of produce, right, but also streams that grow out can be shabal, right, can be used to refer to them as well. Right, so lots of fertility imagery. Of course, she's coming during the time of harvest, which adds to the fertility imagery. Okay, so there's lots of fertility imagery, along with the fact that Boaz is, in him was strength. So there's lots of wink, wink imagery. Okay. So I'm going to go forward. Ahar asher emsahem ba'enav. Okay, after whom I find favor in his eyes, right? So, she says, let me go, please, right, to the field so that I may glean among the sheaves after whomever I find, in whose ever eyes I find favor, right? And again, it's interesting, I didn't remark it here, but notice the emphasis on vision that you'll see continually throughout this text, okay? Now this phrase, right, after whose, in whose eyes I find favor, it's interesting. It's a phrase that's used in, I am told in my own notes, right, phrase used with Joseph and with Moses, right, in Exodus 33 with Joseph and Genesis 47:25, right? And it kind of is code word for, hopefully I can find favor in the eyes of somebody more powerful than me. And they can, they can protect me and be gracious to me, right? And of course, it's interesting that she says that because that's what will happen to her, right? She will find favor in the eyes of Boaz, who really acts as an intermediary of God, right? What they don't recognize, Ruth and Naomi, is that they've already found this favor, right, in the eyes of God, right, who will, is enacting God's hesed, or, loving kindness, okay, and who will do so before them. Okay, so she asks for permission, okay, and it ends with Vatomer lach lachi bati. And she said, now Naomi replies, and she said to her, lach, right, lachi, right? This is your again, imperative, right, from halak, right? Go, my daughter. And so she said to her, go, my daughter, right? So this isn't the second feminine singular. Notice how, again, to talk about the difference between how somebody who has power talks and somebody, or somebody who is in a more kind of powerful position talks, and somebody who's in a more submissive position talks. Notice how much longer, right, Ruth takes to say her things, and look how short the reply of Naomi is, right? And you'll find that consistently. Somebody who is in a more, position of higher authority will take much shorter time to talk, right? Somebody who is trying to plead their case or in a position of lesser authority will always draw out, right, what they have to say. Okay. Okay, well, I will stop there and we'll continue on with the next video.